Hello everybody, welcome to my beta presentation, Perfectly Balanced. The idea I'm going with is Reverter Omnia. I've chose this topic because in League of Legends, the map Summoner's Rift is asymmetrical and the game I want to create is symmetrical. The issue last time was my entire focus was on the layout of the game, whereas the game itself was too flawed as there wasn't much going on. This time it's updated and still continuing with the symmetrical layout. However, the idea I'm basing it off is League of Legends follows the philosophy of being perfectly imbalanced, whereas the board game I'll be making is perfectly balanced. And the way to explain this, I'll show a clip of extra credits explaining what perfect balance is.
The concept of perfect imbalance. So what is this perfect imbalance of which I speak? Well, fundamentally, it's the idea in game design that you don't always want things to be perfectly balanced. In fact, in most games, you actually want to make sure that there are some imbalances in your system. Not great big haphazard ones, mind you, but carefully crafted subtle ones. You see, many games are actually made far more engaging by just a little bit of imbalance, multiplayer games especially. Now, that probably sounds odd. It's a little counterintuitive and contrary to what most of us believe, and yet it's very true. Let me illustrate this with a counterexample. Let's examine chess, often considered the archetypical balanced game. Chess is symmetrical, so by definition, it's balanced.
The game I will be creating will be a 1v1 fast-paced turn-by-turn board game that'll be 15 minutes long. The reason I'm going for fast-paced is following the principles of the game mode type of fast chess or speed chess, where in normal chess there's a thing known as the first turn advantage, where if you are whites, naturally you get to force the enemy to make a strategy. So therefore, in the gameplay of fast chess is once you're put on a timer, players are able have a chance of making mistakes, even on professional level. So by having this blitz style game fundamentally remove the white turn advantage, however it significantly drops it, therefore maybe trying to balance out the game. So the game itself will need a hex grid and 7 tokens. The tokens are 3 minion tokens and 4 champion tokens. Each champion token will hold a passive and ability they can use. Passives are throughout the entire game, and abilities are once every X amount of turns, depending on which champions were chosen. So respawning is an element of the game. In a game like chess, where the objective is to get the king, in this game the objective is to get one of your tokens to the enemy's nexus or the goal. And if respawning isn't enabled, the game automatically builds a snowball effect, allowing one side to always dominate. The challenge is to outplay the opponents and manage to get to the end. So obviously this is done by remembering cooldowns of your abilities, using tactics to maybe force the enemy to go to a certain place so you can ambush them, and etc. Before the game starts, the players will go through a draft phase where players will take turns to pick champions and go one after another until all 4 champions are picked. So the way this works is, if I pick a character, then the opponent will pick a character, then I'll pick a character, then the opponent will pick a character. However, to balance out the game, both players will use all 4 characters. The 2 he picked I'll play, and the 2 I picked he'll also play to balance out the 4 teams. So this is out of currently a pool of 12 champions. So I won't be going over all 12 champions, that would take too much time. However, the passives for all of the champions are inherited by what role they play. So for example, all tanks passives can block 3 spaces every turn. They can move only 1 space or use that turn to rotate. So if they're in the middle and they want to create a choke point, they automatically block 3 spaces. Now if they want to block another side, they can use that turn to rotate. Before we get to the assassins, let's go to the carries. So all carries passives can move 2 spaces in any direction. So a simple one, as they're the carries, they're going to be like the queen in chess, where they can move in any direction. But to balance this out, instead of going up to as many spaces as you like, you can only go up to 2. So this is front, back, left, right, sideways, anywhere. And supports, passives are able to stack on top of an ally champion space, and if the enemy kills them, the support starts again and the ally remains in its current position. So essentially this is known as like the scapegoat piece, where if you want to make a move, however it might be risky, you can add your support next to it or on top of them, and if the enemy will then have to decide, if I kill this carry piece, for example, the support will die. So they'll need to rethink of a strategy. Okay, so then now if you go back to the assassins, assassins are able to move through ally champions. So if there's a carry piece in front of it, how this works is, instead of overlapping similar to the support, the assassin, you will use that space as another space. So it's essentially able to move up to 2 spaces if he has an ally token in front of them. The minion token, similar to the pawn token in chess, can only move forward one space per turn. Now, the important thing about the minion token, however, is every turn, not only do you have to move a minion token, you also need to move a champion token as well. This is to emphasize the blitz mode, the fast chess theme of this board game. So to make this game fast-paced, the way I've decided to do it is implement what they do in speed chess by adding a timer. So how this will work is each player will be given 8 seconds to make both turns. So in theory, that would mean they have 4 seconds to move their minion token and 4 seconds to move their champion token. The whole point of this is to remove white turn advantage, as by making impulsive moves makes more chances to create outplays as well as making errors for the opponent or yourself. So the target audience and the gender is staying the same. So League of Legends is T for teens, which is 13 and over, and chess can be learned at a relatively young age, primary school, up to, so around maybe 7, 8, 9, 10. So this board game will go around that. Since League of Legends is a T for teen, this game doesn't have a lot of the things in the PEGI rating, such as violence, crude humor, minimal blood, gambling, etc. The official rating can be just dropped to a 7+. The demographics show that, by looking at the pictures as well, that over 90% of the population of who play this game are male. Gameplay activity system, it's pretty simple, as it's a board game. So the player is essentially player 1 and player 2 in real life. The device is the board game. The player tokens are obviously the 4 champion tokens given and the 3 minion tokens. The aiders to be your support and the tank tokens, as they bring like the backbone to the rest of your team, as well as creating strategies to overcome the enemy team. So barriers is essentially the exact same thing as aiders, but from the enemy's perspective. So the opponents would be the assassin and the carry tokens, as they're the most mobile and can overcome some of the barriers depending on which player pools were taken and if there's counters available, as well as from player error if you're being careless. So the target objective is to get the Nexus, which is the goal, to get a token on Nexus, and the goal state is the token actually being on the Nexus base to finish the game. Game context. The tasks is to essentially reach the Nexus, which means get a token to be on the goal, as well as keeping the enemy from reaching yours. So this can be done by developing strategies and finding counterplay towards as both of you will be having the same champions. You can not only replicate each other, but one person might create a different idea compared to the other. So for example, playing aggressive or defensively. So by also utilizing the supporters' passives, as well as each player to remember that their abilities are off cooldown. So for actions, it's essentially to move a minion and a champion token per turn, having 8 seconds per turn to make moves for both of your tokens. Finally, the operations are the things in real life, so using your hands to move the tokens, being aware of the timer every round, as well as being aware of making use of the passives and abilities. The intended player experience is meant to be a fast-paced game following the philosophy of speed chess, game type Blitz, as it reduces the whites always go first advantage. So by doing this, it creates the League of Legends playstyle of being known as reactionary playstyle. What that does to you mentally is it puts you in a fight or flight situation where the player either needs to commit to making a full-on attack or to completely retreat instantaneously. So by having up to 8 seconds to make both moves, this adds the mental pressure for the player to either commit into going forward or using another piece to create a defense. As for player engagement, League of Legends has a lot of third-party software, websites and tools for players to go check stats, strategies, and just general tips for self-improvement. So if this can be done with League of Legends, it can also be implemented within this board game. So finding a new strategy, what kind of champions would work best to synergize. Key engagement rationale shows that in higher levels of play, so the higher level of play you go in League of Legends, the more chance of blue side, which is the bottom side, has an advantage of winning. That's why in this board game, by having it symmetrical, automatically makes the game go back to 50-50. That also ties in with game being perfectly balanced, as both players have equal chance of winning, as none of them will have different champions to create any advantage for each other. The design challenge portrayed as a unique selling point. Board game uses the same IP of League of Legends. The demographics who play the game will also enjoy this game. Currently, League of Legends doesn't have a 1v1 designated map, so what players normally do is they'll go into a custom game and set it up privately. What this is meant to do is, first of all, it's in a board game, so people who like League of Legends may also enjoy this game, and having it as a 1v1, one player, but you're controlling 4 champions. So though it's if you want, you can also create custom games by adding 1 token in, though that may slow down the gameplay. having 1v1 automatically is essentially its own unique selling point. For underpinning game design rationale, this is, like I said earlier, suitable for the target audience, as from the beginning no player holds an advantage, leaving stronger player motivation compared to in league, especially the higher levels of and even in professional. Most, if not all teams, always decide to go blue side first. With the 5% chance of winning and at a professional level, you go more or less guaranteed for a win. Where the problem with perfectly balanced games is known as buffs or nerfs, the game can become stale extremely quickly. So to counteract this, the way League of Legends does it, even though it is perfectly imbalanced, they create new champions and they'll do character updates every once in a while to keep the game fresh. So that aspect can also be implied into this board game. For player testing, this is the first iteration of the game that I made. Initially it had 2 minion pieces and 3 champion pieces, and every turn you had 15 seconds. So from what I gathered from this test is, with 15 seconds is far too long, as when the player has that much time to make a turn, it essentially gives the other player more time to think of a counter strategy. Now the whole point is to make it reactionary, fast-paced gameplay, so I've halved the time to 8 seconds to see where the gameplay goes from there. An idea I got from feedback was, throughout the game, if the game is to last 15 minutes, I can do every 5 minutes increase the timer. So for the first 5 minutes it can be 5 seconds, after 10 minutes it can be 10 seconds, after 15 minutes it can be 15 seconds. That way, as the time goes on, you get more time, as in the late game essentially will be more crucial not to make the mistakes than it is in the early stages of the game. Respawning was a fantastic idea. It followed the philosophy of chess, where once you've taken a token, it's off the board completely. This would allow the enemy opponent to start snowballing and they'll finish the game a lot faster. By having tokens die and then respawning back from the beginning, it creates like a comeback strategy for yourself. So thank you for listening, and is there any questions?